Greetings all, and thanks, Bernie. Glad to have the opportunity to speak with you all today. A little intimidated that I'm the only publisher representative in the room, but that's not what Bernie asked me to talk about. We're talking about data platforms and the global data supply chain in light, particularly of the recent acquisition of Data Planet by Sage Publications, by Sage Publishing. I'm new there. All right, this is a high-level view of what I'm going to talk about today. I want to introduce myself because many of you don't know me. I'll talk about Data Planet. The resource may be unfamiliar to some of you. And then I'll give some background on the drivers and motivations of Data Planet's looking to be sold, and the reason we settled on Sage. Then we'll look at the implications for Sage platforms, for academic access to data, and then for your role as academic libraries in provisioning materials to your user communities. So, a little about me. I have an educational background in sociocultural anthropology and a master's in library and information science. I worked my entire career in the information industry with primarily small database publishers. I took my first job in database publishing in the mid-'80s. That picture on the left, some of you will recognize that dress for success fashion. We were, yes, and the perm. Yeah, those were good days. All right, so I started as an assistant editor, and by the time I became managing editor of Sociological Abstract and the other databases in that family of resources, we moved from a time, and many of you came along, for the, at the mid-'80s, print was still the dominant means of dissemination of information resources, with some access, some usage coming from information professionals and search experts who were utilizing resources like SocioAbs on dialogue and BRS, access through a route, following a route enabled by access by mainframe, networked mainframe computers. From there, we took a relatively, well, now it seems like the blink of an eye, a relatively short period when information products, again, like SocioAbs, moved on to CD-ROM. And it was a giddy time because now it meant that end users were able to directly interrogate the content, the back files of resources like this, and that was huge. It also meant academic libraries had to invest, and did, lots of money in CD-ROM towers and hardware and the peripherals that it required to access those disks. It was a blink of an eye because through the 90s, somebody invented the internet, and most providers moved on to, began to recognize and then implement the possibilities, the dissemination of resources via the World Wide Web. And that also, during that time, it was involved a lot of digitization of back files, both in the A&I world that I was working in, and of course in academic publishing of the journal content. And in retrospect, that happened in a really short period of time, that everybody got online and digitized their resources. In the O's, I moved into more product management, and I worked, CSA acquired Sociological Abstract and that family of databases, and I went to work, as we merged into that company, I went into product management and had responsibility for the social science information resources of CSA and then ProQuest. In 2010, I went out on my own and started a consulting practice with working primarily with small database publishers. And one of those clients was Data Planet. I first met Richard Landry, who the then Data Planet CEO. He's the founder and CEO and president when we needed one. And I met him in the late O's. He was at a table at the back of a hall, of the exhibit hall at ALA Annual, and I was just super excited and impressed with what he was doing. He'd originally built Data Planet under a different name for the corporate market, and then through conversations And the explorations realized that the resource met a need that faced by researchers and academia. So we branched out and we brought it to higher education. What Data Planet is an aggregation of statistical data sets. In the same way that aggregators like ProQuest and EBSCO aggregate content from journals and other content types into their databases like EBSCO Academic Search Premier and ProQuest Central, Data Planet does that with statistical data sets. We do this by ingesting the raw data from the files from a variety of several types of sources, public, private, some commercial, international organizations, and we bring them into our repository. In doing that, we standardize and harmonize the data sets into a common structure, and this allows for comparability and relatability of the indicators and statistics that you find in the repository. As part of that effort, we editorialize the data sets with lots of metadata, lots of descriptive content around about the source, about the contents of the data set, links to technical documentation, all that sort of thing. The data itself, and along with the visualizations that can be created, are exportable via expected formats in data world, Excel, SAS, XML, that sort of thing. And we serve them up in highly customizable by the end user charts, maps, graphs, pie charts, rankings, rank by, a lot of options driven by what the end user is desiring to show in their work product. So if we're that great in doing all this marvelous stuff, including at this time, I want to mention how big we are, which in and of itself should suggest access to data. At this point, we just ran numbers a few weeks ago. We're at 6.2 billion data sets, 52 billion data points or statistics. It's hard to get your head around just what that means, but you know it's a lot. At this point, about 30% of our content is international. I mentioned that specifically because of your interest in the global supply chain. We bring in data from many of the International Monetary Fund databases, World Bank, World Development Indicators, the UN, OECD, China Data Center. We have a full back file of all the releases of the Penn World Tables, an international data set that is used to compare international economies, consumer pricing, and all kinds of economic metrics. It's a corpus of data that originated at University of Pennsylvania and is now hosted in Groningen and managed by people in partnership with people at UC Davis. So why did we go with SAGE? Why did Richard decide it was time that he needed to sell the database? And I mentioned three factors in the first bullet: sales, marketing, back office requirements. That's like accounts payable, accounts receivable. So these are difficult to manage, and it's not just for Data Planet, it's endemic among small businesses, small database publishers, and that's what drives a lot of what you see. A lot of the consolidation, the loss of the mom and pops, it's driven by this, or the pop or mom wants to retire. It's that kind of thing. And Richard became increasingly frustrated with these challenges. Our core competencies are technology and content, data content, not sales, marketing, paying the bills. So he also had a bigger vision of what he wanted Data Planet to do, and just realized he wasn't going to be able to do it on his own. So he started talking with the usual suspects in the industry. Who do you think would be a good fit? Opening those conversations, and he and Sage agreed to do this, to do the acquisition. And for Richard, those are the four things that he speaks to most. And one is the first, Sage gravitas and reputation as a partner to the academic community, to scholarly societies, to the authors that publish in the journals and books that Sage publishes, and as a partner to academic libraries. Also, the company's values and culture are aligned with our small group at Data Planet. Sage has, and you'd think sometimes when corporations say this that it's can just be words, but at Sage, and I don't say this just because I've been there 3 months, but because I've known people at Sage through my whole career. They live the mantra of an engaged scholarship is essential to a healthy society, and we see ourselves as being a part of that, in some way contributing to that goal. Then there is two other factors that really helped drive it. The choice was Sage has a demonstrated commitment to development of enhanced data-enriched resources, and there is in the company a recognition that, or an emphasis on the quantitative social sciences. Not that the qualitative social sciences won't be addressed at Sage, or won't continue to have a role at Sage, but it is seeing a growing emphasis with the emerging data sciences programs around the U.S. and the globe. Sage, founded in 1965 as a mom and pop and still remains. Sarah McKean-Miller is still very active at the company. We think of it as as a journal publisher, which is indeed the largest piece of the business, but Sage also publishes a variety of other things, books, and some of the other resources that you see listed below. In the area that has something to do with statistics, you'll see Sage Research Methods, that as a learning and teaching tool for social science students teaching about research methods particular to the social sciences. There's two other statistical products, Sage Stats, a more entry-level statistical aggregation, and then U.S. political stats, which was part of the digitization of a well-known CQ Press product. Multimedia content and Sage video, and then business and management includes various types of content, including business cases. There's also primary source content from Adam Matthews' imprint. I really need some water. Can you bring me that bottle? Sorry about that. Sage is undertaking a wide range of support activities that's aimed at building the interaction of social scientists with data. And some of the ways we do that is that sample data sets are included in Sage Research Methods, which helps undergraduates learn more about the social science research methods and engage with data while they're doing that. Sage partnered with Facebook and the O'Reilly Media Group and sponsored a FOO camp. FOO stands for Friends of O'Reilly, and these are camps or conferences that are premised on the notion that there's great interaction and valuable interaction and knowledge sharing that happens in the hallways at conferences, in the coffee shops, and in the cocktail lounges, and they encourage lots of sharing of and lots of conversation at these things. They're supposed to be. Went to this, and he said how it was so stimulating and energizing because of the variety of people from all kinds of sectors that participate them. So sounds fun. Sage also has convened data scientists and social scientists to explore the interaction, have scientists working in these two areas come together and see where the synergies are, what's happening. And data science, of course, is more focused on analytics. What does that mean in the social sciences? So Sage has convened that. Journals have been launched that are in the world of data. I have here Big Data and Society, I think on the obvious topic. Sage has a commitment to expanding the size and reach of Data Planet, which we're happy about. There's online courses on data analytics available through Sage Campus. And Sage has also sponsored hackathons where developers are invited in to look at, under the hood at our platforms and products. So all of these were things that factored into Richard's decision, and we're excited in these early days. All the team came along, well, there's not that many of us, single digits, that came along, so it looks good. I want to talk about what we're seeing again, early days, on what the implications are for Sage platforms. And first and foremost is the ability to leverage Data Planet technology across other business units and products of Sage. It's very sophisticated, robust underlying technology with deep meta searching capabilities, and that is the main piece of what we're seeing as what we can improve and enhance other products. Equal to that is the second point. I said main, but the two bullets here are probably equal at Sage on what I'm hearing and what we're talking about in the many meetings we've had. It's the push and pull of tangential content across products and platforms. And what I mean by that is we can put data into other and enrich and enhance other Sage products, other reference publications, some of the tools like research methods, the knowledge platform. There's a lot that we can do that way, and vice versa. We see Sage traditional publishing products or more verbose-based text being brought into Data Planet to help provide more context to the data sets themselves. So those are two really big things we're exploring this year, and I think you'll see some things coming out within the next couple years that you'll see this starting taking effect. The other way is this third point. We are seeing that the themes and research focus of Sage's traditional publishing program can inform what data we put into Data Planet. We have an existing coverage policy that's probably driven, as it should be, by requests from our users and librarians that subscribe to us. We have a vetting process, feasibility study, publicly posted coverage policy. That doesn't ever go away. But we are also seeing that, like a couple weeks ago, a commissioning editor that's working on something that has to do with the international economy came to us looking for international trade data, and we went over what we have already in Data Planet in that area, and it's quite extensive. But it came out that World Trade Organization data would also be valuable for this particular project, which is research as it's happening. So it's in QA process now, so that's a way that we'll be able to help keep Data Planet meeting the needs of researchers for the current areas of interest. The next is I want to talk about what this acquisition means for, and what Data Planet and the acquisition can mean for academic access to data. And that, first is, I hope, by saying what we've done with the statistical aggregation and the quantity of data that we bring into the repository, is that we're making global data discoverable and searchable, and that's really the big deal about Data Planet. By bringing data into a common platform, by making it discoverable across publishers, it helps ease that research, the researcher's workflow. We have the ability to compare and relate data sets because of the harmonization and structuring that we do. An example of why this can matter is each of the major international organizations is going to have a series of economic indicators that matter to them. So, for example, they might all be collecting IMF and World Bank published data on on GDP, gross domestic product. There are situations where that data is, the actual statistics may vary between those two organizations, and Data Planet can help a researcher or a student see what is that difference, and then open the question is why would there be differences in what the data collection programs. We also serve a role in preserving access to at-risk data sets. And here it's easier for me to use examples from the U.S. because of the current environment. We've recently, in the past 2 years, brought in data from the Global Historical Climatology Network that's published by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And this data set includes monitoring site data, monitoring sites of that network, so it's very granular. It was considered to be at risk because of the climate change isn't happening. In the same way, we brought in monitoring site level data on air quality from the Environmental Protection Agency. So that is in Data Planet. Our policy is as long as, even if a data collection effort ends on the part of one of the publishers that we are currently providing, that we retain that data and continue to make it available for our users. An example of that is OMB, Office of Management and Budget, used to publish the Consolidated Federal Funds Report that had data on government budgets and expenditures. That data collection effort was discontinued in as of 2011 because of the sequestration during the Obama years. We have the data through 2010, so it's still accessible to the research community. This fourth bullet on harvesting data from APIs has to do with a number of U.S. government agencies and international organizations are increasingly releasing data through APIs, application programming interfaces. And because I can't get into the technology of that, it allows our developers to query the back end of their data release system and bring in all the data. It makes it more comprehensive and improves the currency and improves the currency of the data that you'll find. And I think we're just, even Census Bureau is now using quite a few of these, so I think you'll just see that across the board, across this space as the years go by. Another way we support academic access to data is by expanding the size and the reach of it. Just the amount of data in there is all it speaks to is access. The final point I wanted to make on this was that we were a leader in using DOIs to assign DOIs to data sets, which means that a user dynamically can create a DOI to the view of data that they've created, a particular selection of statistics that they've pulled down from the system, and create a DOI on the fly. And that, of course, allows them to get back to that particular view, that particular set of data at the time it was created, with an option to update if there is, in the case of when there's new data available. All right, the final thing I wanted to talk about was how we see that we support the role of academic libraries in providing data to your user community. So the first is that, as I've said a few times, we bring together in one tool data from major international organizations. So we see that as supporting your role in connecting researchers to credible global data sources. And the one tool piece of it, the common platform, means it's easier for your students and researchers to get to that data. The second way, and there's this is CRL. Many of you likely purchase data sets on behalf of your communities, and some can be. There's two cases I think that it speak to that may resonate with you. We can host that data. In the case of data that you've licensed or purchased on behalf of a particular research program or a faculty person that's asking a very specific question that has a restricted use license surrounding it, we can help you control that access so that only that specific group can use that data. And we can also, conversely, if you bought a large data set that, say, your data science program wants to use to run through some major analytics, but the license doesn't restrict the data from being available to the rest of your community, we can do the structuring and bring it into Data Planet and help you get more value out of that purchase that you've made. Similarly, we can help with research data management, meaning that we can help curate, take care of access control, data security requirements, maintenance, archiving, all the kind of things that go around, well, both data hosting and research data management. And then my final point is that Data Planet provides an opportunity to help you teach and promote data literacy. Use the examples I've mentioned about the different statistics published by IMF and World Bank for GDP. That's an opportunity to open a conversation with a student about data literacy. And similarly with the Consolidated Funds Report example, that's what can happen to data, why does it why is it important for you as a student, as a grad student, to be involved with advocacy for data. And that, of course, circles me back to engaged scholarship is essential to a healthy society. That's it. Thank you. Any questions except on the cost of journals?
Thank you. Hi, I'd like to ask you about the relationships, because I can imagine there are several kinds of relationships that Data Planet has with data that's already open access. You know, you mentioned NOAA and EPA data.
Right. Yes, we ingest data from public sources. We see our value in that the data remains available, open source, and anyone can use it and run it into their own statistical packages. Our value is in the technology that we've built and in bringing all disparate data sets into a common structure that allow you to look at the statistics and the indicators together in one tool.
And so do individuals or organizations that contribute data to Data Planet in that way, do they have any other benefits from making that contribution?
You mean Census Bureau?
I don't know of a specific example, but an organization says, well, we'd like to contribute this big, important data set to Data Planet. Do they get anything back? Do they get any money back? Do they get access?
There are some of the, that would speak to more of there's content from private sources in Data Planet too, and we pay a license to them. The cost of some of those licenses are so prohibitive that we, for easy analytics, there's a few that are, the licensing cost to us is so prohibitive that it would change that we charge a subscription add-on, so only those interested in using that data can access it. So in some cases there'll be a royalty paid. If there's other cases where a provider might want access back in to look at the data themselves, certainly we provide that. Census Bureau's never asked. we're always upfront. They know, I mean, it's open. That's, as you said, it recognized it's open access. So we're bringing it into the tool in order to deliver it, and then means that we think was of value to the research community.
This is about the global supply chain for data information. I'm just wondering, what are your plans, Data Planet's plans to grow and develop their international and country-specific?
Thanks for asking. I meant to talk about that. Yes, part of the, I mentioned the sales, marketing, back office issues, challenges that we faced. We had because of those, we had very little presence outside the U.S., maybe a couple in subscriptions in China, very limited access just because it's expensive to maintain an international sales force. Well, Sage has one. There's offices around the world, and we've been hearing already, we've had so many requests come in from those different global offices on, hey, can you get this into Data Planet? So it's a growth area. It's been a focus at Data Planet, increasing the amount of international data the past 2 years with what we brought in a ton of international monetary fund data at their request, actually. And we've been, because of now we have exposure and interested people or institutions around the world, we will be responding to that. Curiously, I think you'll find we expected that the issue was what the request we were going to get would be for local level statistics from the national statistical agencies, and that's not the case. They're what we've been getting requests for so far have been from more of other of the large international organizations. So that was not what we expected, but that could change. There's challenges, of course, with local level because of the language. It's hard to, at the statistical indicator level, if it's presented in Hungarian, do we have the in-house, do we have resources to do that translation in order to understand the structuring of the data? That may be, we'll see what happens going forward with that, but certainly you'll see we are increasing our emphasis in the international data world.
Thanks, Maria. A follow-up question on that. What about China? Any special obstacles or experience you're having in getting data from China or from other?
We already have China Data Center, which is a cooperative run out of the University of Michigan. We do make available in the in Data Planet the national level data from China and via the China Data Center, and that is the national. That's the yearly statistics, and that's the data program in China. We have to make available as one of the premium, like we have to charge more for the subnational data from China. That is the data on provinces, counties, district level, city data. Again, because that royalty that we pay is prohibitive to absorb in the regular price of the prescription. So if you want, if your institution requires subnational level data, that would be an add-on price. But yeah.
So just a follow-up to a follow-up question. The royalty involved in that, is that to the Chinese government or is that to a Chinese statistical agency?
We license it from the China Data Center. I don't know what their relationship is with the Chinese Statistical Agency. I know that that's who they work with, but our relationship is with the China Data Center, which is who handles that data processing.
The reason I wonder is because in some instances, getting data from governments means it is necessarily biased because of political.
Sure. That's opportunity to teach data literacy. Yes, but it's such a high demand, and they are a reputable, China Data Center out of is a reputable source provider.
How does Data Planet, now that you're at Sage,
imagine working with an organization like CRL? I don't know. I think you can probably speak to that. You've had I don't know. I can't answer that. I can find out, but you might, Bernie, you could probably speak to it better than I can. I don't know your conversations with Richard and Sage.
Actually, there was a conversation this morning at the council meeting, discussion of the need for a number of libraries, the number of libraries expressed in having their institutional repository data hosted or handled in a bigger, more robust system. That kind of thing. So that struck me when you talked about the hosting service that Data Planet does. That's one of the other is the harvesting of potentially controversial government-produced data, like on climate change, that kind of thing. There have been a number of grassroots voluntary efforts to the data rescue and data refuge efforts to try to harvest that stuff, but those are not sustained. They're not sustained efforts. They're kind of emergency mobilizations, and they happen and then they go away. But is there potential for data plans to do that on a kind of more continual basis?
And on an OA access, perhaps. Those are conversations we've had. We wanted to see, we're quite aware of the data rescue. We didn't know what we should be doing, so we just started getting data. And there's conversation. I don't know, there's no strategy around it yet that I'm aware of or that I can speak to, but certainly it's that conversation. Some of those, is there a piece of data plan that should be OA? That we've had comment, input around to get that for some time. We had to get a little bigger to meet the resource requirements in order to actually be in this space. So it was just couldn't be done, but going forward it may be. Yeah. Okay, looks like that's that. Thank you.